Hey everyone, and welcome to the tutorial series for the Procedural City Generator. In this tutorial, we'll be taking a look at a brand new feature that's included with the 1.1.1 update, and that is the ability to generate a very specific circular road pattern for your roads. Obviously, PCG uses a very specific algorithm to randomly generate all of your roads, as you can see there. But I wanted to give you guys the ability to procedurally generate more intricate patterns, things that you would see normally, that would be harder for this algorithm to create. And now that you can add manual roads, right, you could create this manually, I figured this would be a nice little bonus to give you guys the ability to quickly create some shapes, and then you can quickly add them to the city. So the very first shape that I wanted to experiment was this circular pattern. So how do you get this blueprint? Go ahead and go to Procedural City, Blueprints, go to the Roads folder, and you're going to see a brand new folder called Road Patterns. Open it here, and you'll see this one blueprint called BP Road Pattern _ circular. Go ahead and drag it and drop it into your level. I already have mine here. And as soon as you select it, you'll see there's a bunch of options, but let's just go ahead, scroll all the way down, and spawn roads. And as soon as we do that, we see that we have a very specific pattern of roads. We have a roundabout here in the middle, and then we have 8 flaring rows that are kind of going around in 360 degrees. And then we have connecting roads that are connecting all of these flaring roads. And this would be a pattern that you would see maybe in a neighborhood. At least here in the US, they would have similar patterns to this. Where one of these roads would connect to another main road, and then when you come in, you would have homes in kind of this pattern here. So you have a bunch of options here, so let's quickly take a look at some of the ones that we have here. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have a middle mesh, and you can obviously change the mesh here. If you ever wanted to have a middle mesh like a roundabout, you can use the roundabout _big that comes with PCG, or you can obviously add your own. Or you also have the option of showing or hiding the mesh by clicking on this boolean here. So if you wanted to have something different in the middle, you could always hide it or include your own mesh. And you also have an offset here for that mesh. So in this case, it's 50 units to make sure that this roundabout mesh is flush with the floor. So you can kind of play around with that. You also have the option of adding specific road tags to your roads. And these are going to be actor tags that are automatically added to the road. And if you saw the video on road management, you know why it would be very useful to add custom road tags to these roads, because then you can just spawn buildings on those specific roads. Then you have a total angle, and in this case it's 360 degrees, which is what is forming this circle. But if I wanted to change this to say 270 degrees, go ahead and change that. And you can go ahead and click on spawn roads. And you'll notice now that we have 270 degrees from the front of the blueprint, which is the X, all the way down. And the roads are going to be spaced equally, the flaring roads, for that angle. If you wanted to do 180, well, pretty sure you can figure out exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be half, as you can see here. And you're going to have the roads be flaring this way. So you have the option of making it a full circle or however many angles here. You have the ability to choose the number of rows that are going to flare out. In this case, we have 8. We can change that to, let's say, 12, for example. Click on spawn roads, and you'll see that we have a lot more now, 12. Or you can maybe put like 4. Right? You can play around with those values, but those values are basically detecting. See, that's kind of a different pattern, right? Those are the flaring roads, and this is going to be the start distance of those roads. By default, is 3,000 because the radius of this blueprint here of this roundabout is 3,000 units. So if you wanted to separate these roads more, maybe your mesh is bigger, you can change the values here. So if we chose something like 6,000 and click on spawn roads, notice that now the roads are starting at 6,000 units of distance from the middle of the blueprint. And if I wanted to hide this middle mesh, you can see that now we have a very different pattern. Let's go back and choose 8 rows. And the next thing is the total number of segments. And a segment is basically the mesh between two spline points. So if you have 5 segments, you're obviously going to have 5 spline points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because by default, we're not counting the first one. So we have 5 segments, and that will give you kind of the size of the road. If you wanted to, increase the number of segments, make it even bigger, say you wanted 8 segments, we can spawn the roads, and now you can see that we have longer roads and more segments. So you can see here, and remember we went back and changed this to 8. So you can control the length of the flaring roads by the total number of segments here. You can also control the size of the segments, and we're going to see that in just a second here. But let's table that for a minute. You also have the option of selecting what kind of road you want for the flaring roads and for the connecting roads. And by default, I have minor roads as flaring and side roads as the connecting. But of course, we can change that. We can say, hey, I actually want main roads, and maybe we want minor roads for these options. And we can go back and click on spawn roads, and you'll see that we have a different kind of generation. Notice that it's bigger because the segment for the main roads are going to be bigger. And we have a different kind of pattern here. We also have a % chance to spawn for the connecting roads, and 1 is 100%. So obviously every single road that is connecting is going to create this perfect pattern. But if you wanted to change the pattern and vary it, we can also make this different. So let's say we want a 75% chance to spawn. We click on spawn road, and notice that now not all the roads are there. If we make this smaller, like 50% chance, and click on spawn road, you notice now that we have very different patterns, and we can keep going until we find something interesting. But the point is that now you have kind of a more random pattern. Then you have, I'm going to go back and select these as the default and click on spawn again to make it a more of a tighter shape. Now we have another option called the start point, and this is going to be the spline point where the connecting roads start. And right now by default is the 3rd spline point. So if you see that, by the way, we're not counting this, 1, 2, 3. Notice that we're starting our rows on the 3rd spline point here. If we go back and say we want the starting point to be 4 instead, we'll see what happens if I just click on spawn rows. Notice that now the inner ring is being removed because now we're starting on the 4th spline point. Or I can do the opposite and say I actually want to start at the 2nd spline point, and now you'll see that we have an even tighter ring in between the roads here. So you can control when it starts, and you can control the last spline point, but by an offset. So by default, it'll try to connect up to the very end of the road here. But if you wanted to have like maybe a little offset here, we can say, hey, why don't we offset the last spline point by 1? And now look what happens at the edges. We click on spawn roads, and now we have kind of a missing edge that is going to be the outer edge. So you can play with these two values. Say we put 2 here and spawn roads, and you'll see that we have now a different kind of ring. So you can play with these values to decide where these connecting roads start and where these connecting roads end by playing with these two values here. And the last thing we want to take a look at is the segment length. So if you click here and you open this array, you see that each one of the road types has a different length. So highways is going to go from highways to main roads to minor roads to side roads. And this is going to be the length of each segment. So if we say we have a total segment of 8, we're going to multiply each segment is going to be the length found here based on the road type. These are the values that I'm using by default in the road manager, which is why they're matching, but you can feel free to change these values any way you want. All right. And these are just going to be arrays that are keeping track of all of the roads that have been spawned. So you can see here. So you can easily remove the roads since they're all going to be tracked here. Another thing you can do is you can spawn the crossroads. I just put this as a convenience, as you can see here. You can obviously do that through the regular menu here, spawn crossroads, once you add the roads to your city. But again, I just wanted to add this option as a convenient option here. All right, so let's go ahead and remove our roads and let's select everything for the default. And let's see what happens now if we wanted to integrate this to our city. So I'm going to go back and I'm choosing all of the default values. Click on spawn roads. And let's see now that we have this, we want to try to maybe attach this to one of the main roads here on the city, or maybe one of these side roads. So what we'll do is we'll try to move this, and you'll notice that there's an issue here. So you'll have to regenerate the roads. This is just the way that Unreal Engine works. If you don't manually touch the spline, and just move it, the mesh won't really update properly, but you can still see the points there. So what we want to do is we want to try to align it like this, and let's just click spawn road again, and you can see now that we may be able to align it. So what we do here is we want to select all of the roads here. Oh, actually, before we do that, for convenience, let's go ahead and add a new tag, tag 1. And let's go ahead and remove and regenerate the roads. And now they're all going to have tag 1. So if I come down here and select this road, you can see that they have tag 1. We'll do that so we can just spawn the buildings only here. All right, and now let's go ahead and extend this road here and try to connect it. It's not going to be perfect, but you get the idea, right? You'll spend the time to connect it. But now you see that we have this very specific road pattern that we can manually connect to our city. So remember, if we wanted to add all of these roads to our city, we want to go ahead and click on the main road pattern, and all of the roads that are spawned by this blueprint are going to be parented or attached to this. So just click on the first one here, scroll all the way down and shift click, and now we've selected all of the roads here. We're going to go to our city, go to manual roads, click on add selected roads to city, and all of these roads are now part of the city. And now we can go back, and what we'll do is we can now go to buildings and we can spawn on these roads only. However, before we do that, notice that the city limits are not covering our roads, and that is very important because if we do that now, no buildings will spawn. So keep that in mind. The city limits are the ultimate bounds for all of the roads and all of the buildings. So we're going to change the city limits here. We're going to make them bigger, much bigger, and we'll just move them here a little bit. And it doesn't really matter. We're not going to generate more, but we just want to make sure that the roads are covered by our city limits. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And now we're going to go back to road management, and we're going to select roads with tag 1. And notice that it selected 41 roads. And now when we go back to general settings, we'll reset the batch. We'll click on spawn road buildings. And our buildings are going to spawn. There we go. So notice how everything seems to be working together now. Some of these buildings that I've had from a previous tutorial have these building here. But you get the idea. With road management, with the ability to automatically add tags, and with this blueprint, you can create really interesting, very circular shapes. And you can see now how we can all combine it all together to make sure that we have a very nice shape and a lot more control as far as how we're spawning our buildings. So that is pretty much it, guys. I do plan to maybe add more shapes. This is the one that was very obvious based on an email that I got from somebody asking about this pattern. So that's kind of what gave me the idea. If you have any other patterns that you see in your country or that you would like to see programmatically, that is, let me know in the comments below. I'll be interested to know. This wasn't that hard to make. And because it's completely separate from the spawner, I can really go crazy with the algorithm, and then we can just add the rows to the city. So really interesting to hear what you have to say. Again, this is just a bonus. You don't have to use this at all. This is just a way of, hey, if you wanted to make this pattern, here's a way of doing that. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't joined our Discord, go ahead and join. I'm going to put a link in the video description. Join our Discord. I'm a lot more active there. If you have any questions, come ask. If you have any suggestions for this or any other feature for PCG, go ahead and come to our Discord and let me know. And who knows, maybe one of your requests will make it to a future update of PCG. All right, guys. Hope you like it. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.